Welcome back to CanCon, my exploration of the finer and some of the not-so-fine points of Canadian culture and media. Also, my least popular show, probably because it takes me several years between episodes.
Anyway, this time around I wanted to introduce y'all to a bit of Canadian history the same way that most Canadians of my generation were, through really cringy government-sponsored public service announcements. Airing on Canadian networks as early as 1991, these Heritage Minutes are a series of minute-long shorts reenacting iconic moments of Canadian history aimed at educating the public about our rich Canadian heritage. And they were quite successful at reaching that goal, but perhaps not in the exact way that was intended at the time. But regardless, many of these shorts are burned in the memories of Canadians of a certain age range. Attempting to take on a serious tone and cover very serious topics from Canada's unique history, these Heritage Minutes received exposure on mainstream Canadian television and became kind of a pre-internet meme within our culture. So let's go over a few that stood out as interesting and funny to me.
First up is the basketball thing. So in 1891, a Canadian named James Naismith invented basketball, but that isn't the big takeaway here.
What I really took away from this short was the story of this sports legend janitor who had to climb up a ladder every time a point was scored in one of his peach baskets. So he rightfully suggests that maybe this isn't the most efficient way to run a sport.
And Mr. Naismith, sir, it sure slows things down having to climb up here every time.
To which Mr. Naismith suggests that they cut the bottoms out of this janitor's baskets, as the janitor protests.
Let's cut the bottom out of the basket.
But I need these baskets back.
In the very next scene, they clearly ruined this guy's future fruit-picking expeditions and didn't even cut a big enough hole for the ball to pass through, so this poor janitor still has to stand under the basket with a broom for each point scored. Clearly the game of basketball wouldn't exist without this guy, who I'm pretty sure is American, while the Canadian who's supposed to be the focus of this short comes off as kind of a jerk.
Next up is one about French explorer Jacques Cartier and where the name Canada originates from.
Pretty much these dumbass explorers mistranslated the Iroquois word for village, which is Canada. So instead of owning up to that fact, we opted to just roll with it for over a century. Good times. I mean, I'm cool with it. Canada's a pretty badass name, and the term village kinda has a positive connotation. Besides, it's not like we can just change it. It's like our flag or our national anthem. Oh, wait.
Canada gone.
But I'm sure it means the houses, the village.
The origin of Superman. So one of the creators of Superman was a Canadian named Joe Shuster, and that's pretty much it.
What I find interesting is that if you do any research outside of this short on his career, you'll find that he and his American writing partner ended up getting screwed pretty hard by the comics company DC over the character rights. Part of our heritage, I guess.
Next up is Winnie the Pooh. He's named after a teddy bear that's named after a real bear that's named after the city of Winnipeg, and what I've always assumed was feces.
Let's call him Winnie the Pooh.
Why Pooh, son?
I don't know, just Winnie the Pooh.
Turns out there was a swan named Pooh, and it had nothing to do with bowel movements, so I don't have any more material on this one. Next. This next one is called Peacemaker. It tells an Iroquois legend of various tribes driving out a great evil that divided the people. It's a little unique among these shorts as it attempts and fails pretty hard at special effects. Other than that, as far as I can tell, like all the other heritage moments, this one's 100% historically accurate.
Does the Great Peace still have power?
You're here, aren't you?
So, in 1959, Jacques Plante was the first goalie ever to wear any kind of protective mask.
I'll just point out that hockey itself was invented in 1877, so it's actually quite shocking to learn that it took decades of concussions and brain damage before someone was like, hey, maybe taking a rock-hard hunk of rubber to an unprotected face at over 100 miles per hour isn't the optimal route here.
Next up is burnt toast. Well, it's not named burnt toast, but most people know it as the burnt toast one.
It's actually titled Walter Penfield, who was a Montreal neurosurgeon who made advances in seizure treatment in the 1930s. But most people I know remember this as the burnt toast one.
What is it, Mrs. Gold?
Burnt toast. Dr. Penfield, I can smell burnt toast.
Holy shit, she's right, my toast is burning.
Next up is one about Jenny Trout, the first woman to practice medicine in Canada.
Of course, that wasn't my initial takeaway from it. No, instead we find out that Jenny here was a stone-cold ball-buster. So these douchebag doctors in this meeting aren't fans of having strong, independent females around.
This organ, which I regret I cannot name, because of the presence of these members of the weaker sex.
Our hero Jenny ain't taking no shit from no man though. She threatens to talk to this dude's wife, which emasculates him so hard that this other guy feels it on the other side of the room. And then this absolute firecracker proceeds to emasculate the rest of the room by revealing its tiny pecker. You go, Jenny Trout.
Speaking about badass Canadian women, this next one's about Laura Secord.
the woman who is credited for basically single-handedly stopping an American invasion and subsequently forcing the surrender of 500 American troops during the War of 1812. We then proceeded to emasculate the rest of the country by burning down the White House and then casually walking back to Canada.
The last one we'll look at is the story of Sam Steele. He was an officer of the Northwest Mounted Police in the Yukon during the Klondike Gold Rush.
The short involves Mr. Steele interrogating some asshole American when they crossed our border and ignored our laws by bringing guns and gambling gear into Canada. The situation escalates and the American pulls a gun on Officer Steele. Our boy Sam isn't even fazed though, he just stonewalls the dude and has him deported without so much as a blink. This short really gets over that this man was an uncompromising badass, but really doesn't do his story justice. He's been referenced in many fictional works, but his real-life accomplishments really don't need much elaboration. He stands as a beacon for justice and righteousness not only for the Canadian Mounted Police, but for all Canadians.
I could have shot that guy right there. Why didn't I shoot him? Damn it.
So that's my quick look at a few of the Canadian Heritage Minutes. These are just the ones that stood out to me as kind of funny. There are a lot more of these shorts, and more often than not, they hit their mark perfectly. Just to name a few that stuck with me despite me not having any jokes to make include Terry Fox, Marconi, Valor Road, Orphans, and the Underground Railroad, as well as many, many others. These shorts are still being produced to this day, and the newer ones have amazing production value. If you're interested, I'll include a link to Historica Canada's YouTube channel, which currently houses the shorts. I suggest you check them out. Heritage Minutes have permeated Canadian culture to the point where they themselves have become a part of our heritage. While many remember these shorts as kind of memey jokes, the information was still absorbed by the masses. The medium really has become the message.
As just one Canadian, I wanted to make this small tribute and share and reminisce with my fellow Canadians, and also share with my international friends.
Now the people will know we were here.
Once again, my name is Fadedragontear. Thanks for watching, eh? Peace out.
Now the people will know we were here.